Thank you, everyone, for coming. My name is Rick Tate. I am the chairman of the Pickens County Republican Club. And as always, we start with a prayer, but it's actually a quote and a prayer. The quote, I've gotten in the habit of doing this. I like it so much. The quote is from Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president. Sir, my concern is not whether God is on our side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side, for God is always right. If you join me in prayer. Dear Lord, please bless our community, our state, and our country. We pray that you would always give us the guidance necessary to always be on your side. Amen. The pledge, if you would stand with me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are an auxiliary group of the South Carolina Republican Party. We are not the Pickens County Republican Party. We are the Pickens County Republican Club. But like I say, we are sanctioned by the SCGOP. And with that in mind, I'll share the South Carolina Republican creed with you. I do not choose to be a common man. It is my right to be uncommon. If I can seek opportunity, not security, I want to take the calculated risk to dream and build, to fail and to succeed. I refuse to barter incentive for dole. I prefer the challenges of life to guaranteed security, the thrill of fulfillment to the stale calm of utopia. I will not trade freedom for beneficence, nor my dignity for a handout. I will never cower before any master save my God. It is my heritage to stand erect, proud, and unafraid, to think and act for myself, enjoy the benefit of my creations, to face the whole world boldly and say, I am a free American. Powerful words, if you ask me. Are there any elected officials other than the lieutenant governor with us today? I don't think so. Okay. I want to make you aware that this is being videoed, and it will be available on our website, Pickens County Townhall.com, Pickens County Townhall.com, and our Facebook page, Pickens County Republican Club. It will be available tomorrow, and we have a YouTube channel, and if you go to the website, it'll take you straight to you'll see. There is a sign-up sheet right here at the front. So if you would like for us to notify you in the future of future events, if you share your email address with us, we'll let you know, and that is all we'll ever do with the email address. We don't sell it, we don't share it, we don't give it away. And Lieutenant Governor's campaign, they have a sign-up sheet. If you'd like to volunteer, where did you put it? I'm sorry. Yeah, over here. Okay. So let's talk to Michelle, and she will, the lady in the red dress, and she will sign you up to be a volunteer with the campaign if you'd like to do that. We only have one other for sure event coming up in the near future that I've shared with you. May the 7th, we'll be back here with Alan Wilson, the Attorney General, who is the candidate for governor. May the 7th. Same time, same channel, we'll be right here. I think I've covered everything. And now for the introduction. The Lieutenant Governor was born in Ohio and is a graduate of Cleveland State University, where she earned a bachelor's degree in business administration accounting. Is that right? In 2000, she got two firsts. She was the first Republican lady elected to the office of Lieutenant Governor, and she was the first to be on the ticket with the governor. That was the first time that happened. It was individual races before that. Yay! During her time in office, her work has included efforts to improve South Carolina's business environment, school choice, and the promotion of manufacturing and technical job opportunities. Please welcome the Lieutenant Governor of South Carolina, Pamela Evette.
Thank you, everybody. Well, it's great to be back in Pickens County. I was here, I think, just a few short weeks ago, right? I saw you guys. But I probably think my most memorable day, my husband David's with me. He was with me in July, a few years ago when President Trump came to Pickens. Oh my, I think that might have been the hottest day ever in Pickens County. Were you all there? I know we were there. I had the pleasure of speaking on behalf of the president, why it was so important that we had President Trump back in the White House. There was nothing more important for me than that after the dismal years of the Biden administration. Can you imagine? But it was hot. Oh my goodness, but people came out. And I remember everybody talking about, like, well, I wonder how many people will show up. It was going into 4th of July, and it was pretty quick. I mean, from what I remember. And it was full. Everything, every piece of downtown was full. So it was great being here. It's a lot better temperature today. I just left US Waffle. Whew, if you've never been there, I don't know if they do tours, but it was Blueberry Day, and it smelled so good. I think I could have sampled all around if they'd have let us. But as you heard, I'm Pamela Evette. I'm your 93rd Lieutenant Governor of the great state of South Carolina. As you heard also, I'm the first female Republican Lieutenant Governor our state has ever had. I'm also the first Lieutenant Governor ever elected with a governor. And I think that's really important because that is how my path got me here, was much different than most other people. So as you heard, I'm a huge fan of President Trump's. You know, I can remember when he came down that golden escalator because I was in my office watching TV and I just knew right away that he was going to be my guy. And I remember telling my husband, David, this is the guy. And he said, what do you know about him? And I said, nothing. But I know that he's a businessman. And I know he signs the front of checks. And I know he understands all the things we face. But first and foremost, he's not a career politician. And I had it about up to here with career politicians. I had started business from an office in my house, grew it into a national company. And we had clients in 49 states. And what I kept hearing from them, whether they had 10 employees or they had 60,000 employees, was that government was getting too intrusive. And it was getting harder and harder to do business. And I started saying to my husband, you know, my grandparents were immigrants, came here from Poland. And I said, you know, I think they had more opportunity when they came here than our children would for the American dream. And so I started to be a big fan, told all my friends, this is going to be my guy. He's going to win the primary. Remember, it was like 16 people in the primary, I think then. And they said, you're crazy. He's polling like at 2% and, you know, he can't win. Well, then he won. Well, then, you know, he goes on to the general election. Everybody said, oh my goodness, now he's running against Hillary Clinton. How scary is that, everybody? Remember her? A little scary. And he won that. And then I became a political genius, right? Because he won all those things that nobody thought he could win. But that's how I got to know the governor. And one day I was sitting in my office and the governor called and said, Pamela, come on down to Columbia. And that's my governor's invitation. He actually likes it. Very proud of our governor, longest serving governor of South Carolina, very popular governor, and I'm very honored to have his full and total endorsement in this race for governor. But he asked me to come down and meet with him in Columbia. And so I told my husband, David, I said, David, the governor asked me to come talk with him. He said, whatever he asks you, just say no. Because we had 3 children, a big business. My mom's 97, she lives with me, very blessed. But we had a lot of things on our plate. So to my surprise, when I got down to Columbia, he had asked me if I would run with him as his lieutenant governor. And I asked him why. Because I'd never been in political office. I was never even my high school class president. And he said, because I want a business person. I want somebody who has signed the front of paychecks. I want somebody that understands what it's like to stay awake at night and worry how you're going to grow your business, make payroll, and make sure you continue to grow for your employees. And so he had me. I said yes, and we were off to the races. I am so proud of what we've been able to accomplish in the 8 years. This is my 8th year as lieutenant governor. Time flies when you're having fun. but we've been able to accomplish a lot of great things. Had the largest state income tax cuts in our state's history. You're very welcome. We gave the highest pay raises to law enforcement in our state's history, because that was important. The governor went to our Department of Administration and said, I want you to go all over the country and make sure we're paying our law enforcement well. But it was more than that. It wasn't just giving them money. It was making sure they got home safe to their families every day. So it was the money that we asked the General Assembly to give them for equipment to make sure they stayed safe on the streets. And then I can remember going up to the House, because you see, being the first lieutenant governor ever elected with a governor, there was no playbook. And all the people that were lieutenant governor before me, they presided over the Senate. Now, I love our senators. They're all very nice. But I don't think I would have loved my job as much as if I had to sit up in the Senate. It's kind of like herding cats up there, right? So I didn't really know what to do on the first day. I just knew I wanted to be impactful, and the governor wanted me to be impactful. So I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to go back to my business roots. How do you become impactful? You start to make relationships. So I went up to the General Assembly. I walked into the House, and we have this big Sergeant of Arms, Mitch, standing at the door, and he looked down at me and he said, you know, I've been here a long time, and I've never seen a lieutenant governor up here in the House. And I said, well, hello, I'm Pamela Evette. It's great to meet you. I'm going to be up here a lot. And that's what I did, going up there, making relationships, earning the respect of the people I was going to have to work with, finding out what was important to them and telling them what was important to the governor and I. And so I can remember being on the House floor when then Representative Ashley Trantham came up to me and she said, Lieutenant Governor, I'm going to put a bill in place banning biological males from women's sports. What do you think about that? And I said, I'm with you 100%. But I can remember that being something that was stirring early on. South Carolina was one of the first states that banned biological males from women's sports. So I was so happy. Yes, you should clap. This is a good thing, right? And what I like to say is anytime you think like I'm just one person, I really can't change something, just think of Riley Gaines. She was one person that said enough is enough. And she started a movement that took over the entire country, and now look, the U.S. Olympic, or the National Olympic Committee, barring biological males from women's sports. So never think that one person can't get a lot done. We banned sanctuary cities here in South Carolina. Man, and you don't have to turn on the news for very long to figure out what a catastrophe that could be. So because of all those things, because of all the other amazing things, but we would be here into Good Friday if we kept going. With that, I decided in July of 2025 to throw my hat in the ring to run as the next governor of the great state of South Carolina. And you know, I made a promise then. I said, I'm going to get to all 46 counties around the state before the end of the year. And on December 16th, I hit the very last county. Sitting down, I don't mean just driving through, and I had been to all of our counties multiple times over the prior 7 years, but always with a purpose. This purpose was to hear from South Carolinians, everyday South Carolinians, that wanted to come out and tell me what their visions were for their area of the state, the challenges they were facing, and what they wanted to see in the next governor. And so it was amazing. It was amazing to hear people in our rural areas just shocked. I can remember going out to Hampton County, and I can remember telling Wiley, somebody told me there's only 25 Republicans in Hampton County. Are we going to walk into a room with nobody? And it was full of people. They were just so appreciative that somebody cared enough to show up and listen to what they had to say. And you know, I talked about what my dreams are for the state. You know, I believe truly that this is the best state to live, work, and raise your family. But I also believe our best days are still yet ahead of us with the right leadership. And so when I talk about eliminating state income tax, I know how to do it. I'm an accountant by trade. I'm a business person at heart. You know what we're going to do? We're going to lean in on technology, start to automate government. Because what happens in a business when you run efficiently? You bring money to your bottom line. You can start running government efficiently. It means we don't need as much of your money to run government. We need to work for the people of South Carolina. We need to stop pushing paper. Other states that have gone down this road are seeing savings of over $1 billion by leaning in on automation. We want to cut regulations. Do you know, I heard from one of our House members that sits on the review board, we have over 80,000 regulations in South Carolina. And if you remember what I started out talking about, that's what was frustrating me about government, is all of those regulations. President Trump said it right. He said during his first administration, for every one new regulation, we're gonna get rid of 2. In his second, well, he got rid of 4, but the president's an overachiever. During this second term, he said for every one, we're gonna get rid of 10. I believe we should sunset all of our regulations, bring them back up in front of the General Assembly, figure out what is good. If it's good, let's keep it. If it's not good, let's get rid of it. If it's old and outdated. If it's written and we think it's useful, let's make sure it's not so broad that bureaucrats can't inject their own opinions into those things, right? I want to tell you, I've been telling this story for the last couple weeks because I think it'll shock you at what businesses, small businesses deal with. So I was out in Florence and I was sitting down with a business owner. There were a couple of them there. And they were telling me about an event space that they were putting together. And I said, well, how's it going? They said, well, it was going good, but we don't have our occupancy permit yet. And I said, you don't? Why? What's the matter? And they said, well, we built a pavilion to do these events at. And I can't get my final occupancy permit because I can't give them an exit route. I can't show them exit signs. And we don't have a place for our fire extinguishers. Think about it all. It's a pavilion. It's to get yourself to safety, it's like kindergarten. Stop, drop, and roll in any direction, and you should be fine, right? But it was holding them up. I think they said 4 weeks so far trying to articulate that. That's what we don't need. And as a business person and a business owner, I know time kills deals, and time costs a lot of money. And that's what we have to do for our businesses here in South Carolina. We need to make it easier for them to do business and not harder. I can't tell you how many small businesses come to me and say, it has cost so much. I can barely get to the start line, much less try to get my business going. From the permits and the regulations and the hoops they have to jump through. That's not what we want here in South Carolina. We want South Carolina to be a business-friendly state. Judges. Everybody wants to talk about judges these days. Isn't this a really hot topic? Probably what, in the last 2 years, everybody's starting to realize South Carolina is only one of 2 states where the General Assembly elects judges. Well, I believe, and it's not something I've just been saying, it's something the governor and I have been saying for a long time. We believe the governor should appoint and the General Assembly can confirm. Let's make a list of qualifications that makes somebody a good candidate. Let's give it term limits. But first and foremost, let's make sure we have a review process. Because we've seen across the country where judges can get derailed and let criminals out time and time again to terrorize us on our streets. We need to have a way to harness that back in if that happens. So I think that is something that all around South Carolina people get very excited about. But you know what? It's not just on the judge side. We have to make sure that we have prosecutors who are willing to prosecute. We need to make sure we have an attorney general sitting in place that doesn't let the backlog get to 6,000 cases in some cities. 3,000, 6,000, 5,000. That's an important race coming up. Make sure you see who is the best person to do that job. We got to make sure we have judges who will throw the book at people and not let them get out of prison, right? I mean, that as a mom is something that keeps all of us up at night, worrying about our kids, worrying about criminals on the street. We need consequences. We've seen during the failed Biden administration, and we see in states that are blue states, not well run, exactly what happens when there's zero consequences and how crime continues to just soar. There's a lot of people running for governor. We have, I think, 6 people in total now. And I'm going to tell you what I think is the reason you should choose me. First and foremost, I've been loyal to President Trump. I think loyalty matters. I've been loyal to the governor, I've been loyal to the president. And do your homework, because today every candidate will tell you that they're a Trump candidate, right? They were with the president forever. Well, I'll tell you, when the president came to South Carolina in January of 23, I'm the only person running for governor that stood with the president. When there were no polls to say it was the right thing to do, when everybody across America was trying to indict the poor man, I'm the only one that was there. And I've heard all the excuses. Well, I was busy. I was doing something. Something was going on. Well, let me tell you, it was a Saturday afternoon, and I think it was 2 o'clock. And there was nothing more important to me than standing by the president to make sure that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were going to get kicked out of that Oval Office. So you also have to have a resume to do the job, right? You got to know what you're doing. I was a successful CEO in the private sector. I've sat at the right hand of the governor now for 8 years. It's been amazing. He's not just been my friend, but he's been my mentor. And what I tell everybody all the time, once you look at everybody's resume, ask yourself one important question. Would I hire this person to be the CEO of my company? And if you can't say yes, then you probably shouldn't elect him to be the CEO of your state. It's a blessing. I've been so proud and privileged to serve you as your lieutenant governor. And I would be more than honored to serve as your next governor. So thank you all for coming today. It was great that I was passing through Pickens and we were able to get this on the schedule. But I want to open it up for questions. If you all have any questions for me.
Let me get you, turn me down just a little bit, John. If you would wait till the microphone gets to you to ask your question, so we'll be able to hear you on the video later.
Lieutenant Governor, I didn't have a chance to ask you this the last time you came and spoke in Pickens, but not only have you been to all 46 counties, you've been to a lot of those counties many, many times, and you've had question and answer everywhere. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that you're kind of keeping a tally when you're trying to find out what is most important to the residents of certain areas. Mm-hmm. Can you name maybe the top 3 things that you are hearing from the people that, gosh, if you're governor, we would really like to have X, Y, and Z happen?
Absolutely. So everybody wants to not pay taxes, right? Everybody, definitely that is a game changer. People want us to eliminate state income tax. They've done it in Texas, they've done it in Tennessee, they've done it in Florida. It's something the people of South Carolina want to see happen. But I, 3 years ago, realized that our state had no master plan. And that was shocking to me, right? As a business owner, you always have a plan, how you're going to grow. Then I traveled to every county, city. Cities and counties all have plans. Lots of those counties, they don't dovetail into the counties that are next to them. So I started to see this as a problem. So as I traveled around and I've sat with farmers, I mean, let me tell you how important farming is. Farming and forestry together arm wrestle hospitality and tourism for the most amount of revenue brought into South Carolina. And so sitting down with farmers want to talk about the fact that we have a lot of prime fertile farmland here in South Carolina and how they feel that they want to protect it. So I said, let's talk about a master plan. When I'm governor, it's one of the first things I want to do. And when I start talking about putting together a state master plan, people in rural areas get so excited. Their eyes light up, because you know why? For the first time, they believe they'll be part of somebody's conversation. Somebody will actually listen to what they want in their community. And when you're in big cities like Charleston or Greenville or Myrtle Beach, people get excited because they think, wow, somebody's going to put a thought process in to how we're going to grow. And then when you talk to South Carolina Department of Transportation, they get excited because how great would that be to actually know where we're going to target our infrastructure dollars? Play offense and instead of defense for a change, right? And so that is something that people really like. And for me, as a business person, what an advantage. I said I was just at US Waffle. That's what we were talking about. Representative Hyatt was there, and he was talking about Pickens County. What do we want to see come into Pickens County? Everybody has an idea of the type of industry and businesses they want to see in that county. Wouldn't it be great if we could get ahead of it so that when businesses were coming to our state, we would know the areas that would accept that kind of business? So we can hurry it up. Because as I said earlier, time kills deals, and time costs a lot of money. And so that is something that everybody gets excited about. I'm the only person talking about it. When it comes to our farmers, our farmers, they don't have it easy. But what I tell our farmers is what makes them so great is they're so resilient. But it's probably also the thing that gets people not to understand how difficult it is being a farmer. Because when I was out in Marlborough County, and I was sitting down with a big group of farmers. We kind of had a round table. And they were talking about that day, corn commodity price was going for $4 a bushel. Their break-even cost was $5 to $6, but all of them were out harvesting. I mean, how many business owners do you know that wouldn't be curled up in a ball crying on the floor if they knew they were going to lose that kind of money? But our farmers don't. They're resilient, they go out there, they harvest, they sell, and then they figure out what their next crop's going to be. And so we got to do things to help them. We got to make sure we know what land is fertile farmland, and we protect it, and we help them with incentives coming from the federal government on automation so that they continue to do what's in their best interests. They want to do what's in their heart. So I'm the only person running for governor that has pledged to our farmers and our forestry community that I would have a liaison right into the governor's office to make sure that we knew in real time how the challenges that they have and how we could best help them.
I've got one.
Sure.
Sort of a party question, a Republican Party question. We have the party have been pushing for closed primaries for a long time. And I know Governor McMaster is not in favor of closed primaries. I think he said he would, the past session, if either of those bills had came through, he would veto them, no matter which one passed or if either did. So do you agree with the governor, or was your position different, or where do you stand on closing the primaries?
Yeah, so I came out pretty early on, and that was the beauty. This is probably one of the few things that the governor and I didn't agree on. We just see it in a different light. I want to see the Republicans choose their nominee. That's the beauty of having a party, right? So yes, I think that's what the people want. The people of South Carolina want closed primaries. And I feel this, and maybe it's because I'm not a career politician, right? I think you, the people of South Carolina, elect us to do your will. And if that is what the people want, I'm just disappointed that on any given primary, we get less than 13% out to vote. And my dad used to have this great saying, he used to say, you get the government you vote for. We don't even have enough people really to get out and vote. So that's why I have always been happy to stop in, thank you all for coming to meetings. I've done that all around the state, and I'll tell you a funny story. I actually told a reporter this yesterday, is that when I first became lieutenant governor, the number one thing I heard every time I went to a GOP meeting was, oh, you can always tell when it's election time, because that's the only time you see elected officials come. And I never wanted that to be something somebody would say about me. So I made it a point to go to Moms for Liberty meetings, to come to club meetings, to go to GOP meetings, whether it was an election year or not. Because you guys are the heart of what happens in our party. You put out signs, you make phone calls, you stand by candidates. It's a lot of work. And so I want to thank you. We need your help, because we got to get more people out. We got to get more people energized. We have a lot of important things on the ballot. We have this governor's race. You're going to be voting on who's going to be the next CEO of your state. You have an attorney general's race. All constitutional officers, we can just say it blanketly, all constitutional officers are up. We got one federal Senate seat up, the House and the federal level and the state level, all up. That's not even including county races. People have got to get out and vote. Learn about your candidates. Get educated. So I'm tasking you all with making sure you reach out to at least 50 people and make them reach out to 50 more people. Circle June 9th, 68 days away from the primary. It's important. It is really important. You can't complain about government if you don't go out and vote. That's what you should tell your family and friends. There you go.
I agree. And that is our singular mission with this club, voter education and fighting apathy. Another question?
Sure.
Introduce yourself and ask your question.
My name is Dawn. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I have noticed that all the governor candidates are not speaking about conservation. And you spoke about a master plan, but you're speaking more about industrial and business-wise. What conservation efforts would you put in place to maybe change annexation laws, prevent data centers from eating up our farmland and our water resources? And I've got another question that you, and last night, one of the big things in the debate was the casino out on I-95. Are you for the casino? And if the citizens of the state do not want the casino, would you veto it if you become governor?
You know what, this is something, so two very great questions. The governor and I have done the most to protect land and wooded areas. We started the Floodwater Commission. We have done so much on conservation. We've doubled the amount of land in land conservation trusts during our time in office. With the Yorktown, the governor putting the Yorktowns refurbishing, you know, there were a lot of toxic chemicals inside the Yorktown. And we started Office of Resiliency to make sure that those kind of things were getting handled, because if that oil and sludge and everything that was in the Yorktown ever rusted through and got into the water down in Charleston, I can't even imagine what would happen. So that is something I've been really passionate about. I've started the Grab a Bag campaign all across our state the very first year I was lieutenant governor, because I saw how important that was. We picked up the very first cleanup, 15,000 tons of trash. We knew that because SCDOT, everybody was leaving their bags on the corners of state roads, and they were actually weighing that as it came in. So that's something we have to continue. Our beaches, beach renourishment is a big issue, and something that mayors and our beach towns, especially small towns all around the state, have come to talk about at our office. Beach renourishment, because hospitality and tourism makes up a big chunk of the revenue that South Carolina takes in. We've done a lot with planting seagrass. We've had the largest tree planting, I don't know if it's still in the world, but we planted over 1 million trees one day here in South Carolina. Director Mulliken, he's now the director of DNR, spearheaded that for us. So it's something we need to continue, right? Making sure that the beautiful spaces we have now are available for our kids and our grandkids. And I think things like referendums like that, I believe, should go out to the people. And if the people don't want things, then we shouldn't bring them. But I think a lot of it has to go back to them.
So you think the casino should be on a referendum?
Well, I think if this is something that's going to end up being a debate topic, I have not seen any. First of all, there's a lot of different bills that are out there, but I think you should have buy-in from the people. Is that what you want to see in your area? Is that what you want to see in the state? And let them make some choices on what they want to have. South Carolina, we are in an amazing position with growth in general, because we have so many companies from around the world coming here. South Carolina, in that master plan, can look at where things fit best, not just in industry, but it's saving. When you make a master plan, you start to carve out all the land you have in land trust. You start to mark your fertile farmland and figure out how we protect that, how we make sure you don't have China coming in and buying any of that farmland. So a master plan takes conservation into account. It takes economic development into account. It takes all kinds of things into account, and it gives local buy-in to what they want to see in their communities.
Well, we just have a big problem with annexation around here, because our farmland is being taken over by high-density housing developments. So, and the annexation laws have not been changed since 1971. So is that something that you would be willing to change once you become governor?
Well, you know, a lot of that, you know, most changes have to come through the General Assembly, but something we should support, because you're right, it's adversely affecting farmers. Right. Because when cities come in and start taking over parts of their property, then a lot of times taxes go up for them too. And they are already so tightly constrained that you're right. And that is something that literally sitting down with farmers I've been hearing more and more about. And I think you're starting to see that more and more. You have to be really careful, because we do have home rule, right? Like, at what point does the state start coming into localities and telling them what they can or can't do? I mean, fundamentally, I think everybody, especially if you're a Republican, you believe that laws are best served closest to the people. Because, you know, every community is so different. So, you know, I think you're starting to hear a lot more talk about that too, is, you know, do you want to really step on home rule? Nobody has an appetite to come in and try to tell every location and make something blanket for everybody.
In the casino?
Yeah. Would you veto the casino if the citizens do not want it?
If the citizens do not want it, absolutely. It's kind of like we talked about with everything else we've done, is how do you get buy-in? Closed primaries. Does everybody want it? Everybody seems to want it. If you're Republican, everybody seems to want it. I think that's the problem. When we start thinking that we know better than the people that elect us, because I truly believe that when you're elected by the people, you're elected to do their will. But then that puts a challenge on people, one, to get out and vote, and two, for them to reach out to their elected officials. Because I've become friends with a lot of those people in the General Assembly, and you'd be shocked at how little feedback they get from their areas. So if they don't get feedback, they're going to go based on their gut. So never be afraid. I always tell people, be kind, but do not be afraid to send a text and talk to people that you elect, because they really should be doing your will.
I agree. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Somebody else? Huh? Got two ladies over here. Go ahead. Just introduce yourself and answer your question.
Linda Kirkpatrick, you know me.
I know you.
This is kind of off topic, but what are your thoughts on Pam Bondi's departure today?
Oh, wow. Well, you know what? I say thank you for your service, right? She was Attorney General in Florida. She, I know, stood behind the president during the 2020 election when things were, you know, she was flying all around trying to figure out what was happening with elections and really tight battleground states like Pennsylvania. So I thank you for her service and wish her all the best going out into the private sector. It sounds like she's decided to make a shift, and I wish anybody the best. Anybody who will throw their hat in the ring, put themselves out there, I think we should all say thank you for.
Lisa.
I wanted to ask a question about the no income tax that everybody's talking about. It sounds great, but my brother and his wife recently moved here back from Texas. Their home was 5 times, the property taxes were about 5 times more than what I pay. And I paid more for my home than they did for theirs. So how are you going to keep the property taxes down if we have no income tax?
So when you look at redoing your tax structure, you got to take everything into consideration. There is not one silver bullet, right? When you look at, you know, people talk about sales tax, they talk about income tax, they talk about property taxes. You have to look at all pieces of that together. The big things to do is to start running efficiently, because then you start to save a lot of money. You need to concentrate on spending, because that becomes really important. And then you continuously have to focus on growth. So when you start looking at getting rid of regulations that don't make sense, and businesses can operate more efficiently, when you talk about things like making sure that we have the energy that people need to run, especially in those industries of the future, because automation, we talked about that at US Waffle today, is there's not enough people to keep doing manual labor in the workforce. The workforce is aging out. People are having smaller families. You have to look at automation. You know, just like we have to do in government, we have to make sure we have enough energy to give them that. Very proud of what we're doing with the big energy bill that passed last year. So, you know, you have to put all those things together, but there is not one silver bullet. It's probably going to have to happen in 2 phases, and that's what you're seeing being talked about now. And I sat down with a really smart economist, and that's what we talked about, going down 2 phases. Because when you look at sales tax, you know, property taxes, most of that is generated at a local level. When you look at sales tax, respectively, Florida, Tennessee, they're 6% and 7%. You know, we sit at 6%. You start to look at, you know, okay, how are they doing it? Do we have a lot of exemptions? Should we start looking at that? Are there too many things? Are there things that were put on there a long time ago that we should scrutinize further? So it becomes, you know, a whole concept. It's not just saying, oh, we're going to slash and we're not going to think about any of those other things. You got to put them all together, because what you don't want to do is, like you said, there's people now that want us to get rid of property taxes and income tax. And then if you know, at some point, you're right, you have to make sure you have the revenue to pave our roads, to pay our law enforcement, to make sure our schools are good. You know, and I'm really proud of something, you know, one thing I didn't mention tonight that I mention an awful lot is two major campaign promises that the governor and I talked about when we first started running 8 years ago. We said by the time we left office in 2026, when we started, we had the lowest teacher starting salaries in the Southeast. They were, I think, $33,500. We said by the time we left office that we would have starting teacher salaries at $50,000 a year. I'm proud to tell you at the end of last year's General Assembly, our starting teacher salaries had moved up to $48,500, which meant now we were paying more than North Carolina and Georgia. So we were keeping the best and brightest teachers right here in South Carolina. Thank you. And at the end of this legislative season, working with the General Assembly, we will have the money to make our starting teacher salary pay $50,500, completing a campaign promise that we made. We also promised that we would have an armed, trained school resource officer in every school in South Carolina to keep our children safe, because there's nothing more important than keeping our kids safe. Proud to say, at the end of the General Assembly's time last year, we had an armed, trained school resource officer, the funding for it in every school around South Carolina. Another campaign promise made and kept.
While I'm walking to you, I'm going to ask one. School choice. Just talk to us about school choice, where you're at on that.
I love it. Something that I have been championing since I've been Lieutenant Governor. I fully intend to not give up, keep my foot on the gas until we have full universal school choice. Every parent, it's not just their right, it's their responsibility to be able to direct the educational success of their kids. And you know, I remember early on, probably 7 years ago when I started and I talking about school choice, you know, you get a lot of people saying, wow, I don't know, you know, what's going to happen in our rural communities? How are we going to know that our kids aren't being used in like some kind of experiment? It's going to go backwards. I will tell you, states that have true universal school choice have the biggest jumps in educational success. And so that's what we need to do right here. What it does is it raises the playing field. Like, you know, they say a high tide rises all ships. When you have competition in the market, everybody has to do better. And in those rural areas, failing school districts, when charter schools and private schools start to realize that we have universal school choice and parents can make those decisions, they will put schools in those areas. And public schools will have to compete to make sure that they match. I mean, there are some areas like Charleston, when you go to Charleston, they love their public schools. Right? If you're a parent and you're in Charleston School District and you love your superintendent and she's running great, okay, you can stay there. That's the beauty of this, right? Your zip code will not now contribute to your educational success. And so I will continue to do that. There's a lot of momentum to do that. I think it becomes a lot easier and more transparent when you just make it universal instead of having all these, you know, school scholarship programs that we're giving out to parents.
I'm going to guess that every governor in the United States wants to see their state grow, bringing in more businesses and growth in general. Mm-hmm. South Carolina has been growing so fast, and this area, the Greenville-Pickens area, has just grown so much. What are your feelings on the talk about concurrency bills, that you cannot build any more allotments until you have everything in place to support them? There's only so much water in Lake Kiowee. There's only so much power that Duke Power can put out without building more power plants. There's only so much room for stormwater and sewage and landfills. But yet we've got developers coming in, buying up tracts of land and putting in 500 little cardboard box houses. How do we deal with responsible growth?
Well, that goes right back to what I was talking about a master plan, right? Because then that starts to put a plan in place for responsible growth. It starts making the cities and the state and the counties all talk together to see, you know, where should you grow next? where is the best place to actually put thought into it instead of just allowing this kind of organic growth to happen. That you're making my point for me that we need a state master plan. And that's something that we need to do. And that starts to take care of those problems. And that's why you see everybody's face light up when you start talking about that. Because no matter where you are, that's something that means something to everybody. Rural area, urban area, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Rick? Here, Rick.
I'm Eric Hilder. As far as the master plan, how long will it take to implement that? Because
So-
a lot of development can happen in a short amount of time, the way they're going right now.
Well, that's because you're dealing with career politicians. When you think of business people, you bring the best and brightest to the table. And you know, when I talk with really successful businesses around the state, it's another thing I'm really proud that the governor and I have done. I used to always tell my husband, you know, government never brings business to the table. We'd love to have a seat at the table and talk about what we do best and talk about solving problems. But the governor and I have done that, bringing the best and brightest to the table to come up with solutions. And you know, business people say all the time, like, I don't want to go on boards and commissions because I don't see goals. I don't know that it's really doing something at the end. I think our boards and commissions should be run like corporate boards. We should get the best and brightest there. We should unleash them to get things done. And so as your next governor, as a business person, we will start on day one, putting a plan together, implementing it, getting county buy-in, getting the right people at the table. Half the battle is getting the right people to the table.
We have a question from our resident veteran, Mr. John Schaefer.
Hi. Nuclear power is a big deal. The nuclear power plants are huge. What are your thoughts on going towards the concept of microreactors based regionally instead of just one huge regional?
I didn't hear the first part of that, I'm sorry. It
I was talking about nuclear power,
Oh, okay.
microreactors rather than huge nuclear reactors like we have in Oconee. The microreactors could be placed in regions.
So you're talking about small modular nuclear reactors and putting them around the state.
Right, right.
Okay, so the governor and I have both said, and it's something I believe, is we should put everything on the table to see what works the best. Right now, VC Summer, the resurrection of that is a great thing for us, right? Because Brookfield is already on the ground. They were in my office about a month ago. They're saying between 6 and 7 years, you know, builders like to build a buffer in, right? That they will be functioning with 2, moving on to 4 reactors, which is a great thing. Now, when Secretary Zeldin came down with the vice president last year, that was the one thing I asked him. You know, we are fortunate right now that we have an administration that understands that that is national security. Energy security is national security. And I asked Secretary Zeldin, you know, what are we going to do about transmission? Because you can create all the energy you want, but if you can't transmit it where it needs to go, it's not going to really do anything. He said the president, this was a year ago, he said the president's giving me 10 weeks to start loosening and getting rid of useless regulations. Because they're doing it at a federal level too. And what I've heard from C&T and Duke and Dominion is they're starting to feel some of that ease up of pressure from those regulations being turned around. That's why it is so imperative that we don't lose control to the Democrats in either the House or the Senate. You know, this midterm is going to be really important. All the things that the president has been fighting for, all the things that's been happening in the House and the Senate will start to unwind. If we lose the House or the Senate, you will see energy come to a screeching halt. They will fight us on regulations, but the worst part is we will hear for 2 years nothing except impeachment, impeachment, impeachment. And so, you know, I don't think for 1 second Democrats are going to get elected here in South Carolina, but we all know people in other states. And we have to make sure they understand why it's so important to make sure that we don't lose the House and the Senate, because that's exactly what you're talking about is, you know, small modular nuclear reactors, something people are talking about, you know, is that technology getting further and further? I mean, they're doing it in other countries, I think they're really not doing it here as much. Everything I read about that is just because of permitting. Permitting and regulation just makes it too hard. But here in South Carolina, 58% of our power is generated nuclear. And that is a wonderful thing. It's clean, the president is backing it, and we continue to strive and move forward with it. So the key to success is keeping energy affordable and reliable. And not only in that bill did we open up the resurrection of EC Summer, but we also are turning a coal-fired plant into a natural gas plant. I was out with Dominion last week seeing the new piping going in all the way up the Grand Strand and into North Myrtle Beach, which is going to allow a new day for them because they were so constrained on natural gas. They were having to use propane, which meant they couldn't build vertical. And so we solved a lot of problems with that energy bill, and I'm proud to say Dominion is full bore, no pun intended. They're getting that pipe in the ground just about as quick as they can. Well,
Hi. Hi, thank you for being here tonight. My name is Kelsey Crooks. I actually serve our local planning commission in Pickens County. So I appreciate your stance on having skilled board appointees as some of your pitch. I'm curious, one, how would you approach implementing better rules and regulations for boards and committees at a local level when it's mostly controlled by county and city government? And two, my second question is last night there was a debate. Noticeably you were absent.
Yep.
Do you plan on not debating? And if so, why when it's a free event?
Yeah, well, yes and no. Let me get to the first question, okay? There's a lot of boards and commissions at the state level. Governor controls a lot of positions on those boards and commissions. I think we need to look. There's lots of boards and commissions. Some of them haven't met in a long time. We need to get rid of them, make impactful boards. I'm talking at a state level. When it comes to local level, it comes to what I'm saying at a state level. You need to look at who you elect, make sure that they have the qualifications, that they have an understanding of the job, and they understand who they need to put in place, right? Just like we need to do at a state level. There was a debate last night. I will debate. Last night, I didn't go because I fundamentally thought it was wrong that they were charging sponsorship tickets for $20,000. $20,000 bought you 50 tickets. That's $400 a ticket. And I felt that was boxing out, because if I was talking to grassroots people, they were saying they didn't know if they could get tickets. You had to be like a gold level this or something level that to be able to buy tickets. But for me as a candidate, I have a lot of great volunteers that volunteer, grassroots people. For me to get them there, and they deserve to be there, it would mean I would have to spend $20,000 to get in their tickets. And I just didn't believe doing fundraising as we're trying to get elected. I mean, I work really hard, and I have to call people and ask them for money to support my campaign. That is not a good use of my money, $20,000. And so for me, I just thought it was fundamentally wrong. I think debates are a rite of passage. I have already said I would do the SCE TV debate, and I will do one of the other two debates, whichever one kind of works into my crazy schedule the best. But I have been to all 46 counties. I have taken my message to rooms of people like this, got their feedback, answered their questions, and told them about my dreams of what I think the state can be and should be, and I want to listen to what they are, because it is all about what people want in their area. This has been the most transparent campaign I have seen. I'll continue to go to local areas and talk to people, and I'll keep taking my message. I'd love for you all to go on to PamelaEvette.com. Look at where I've been. We send out a newsletter every week of where we've been and where we're going and what people are saying. And that's what people really want. They want somebody that cares enough to come to them. So for me, like I said, I just thought it was fundamentally wrong. I've been part of debates in the past as lieutenant governor. I've sat in the audience and watched the governor, and never were prices like that asked of. So that's just me. I just thought it was wrong, and I'm not saying that that I'm going to fight this fight through all the debates, but I thought it should definitely make a stand, and people should understand, because I kept hearing, well, the rules got changed. I was never worried about the rules of how much money I had to raise, or how many where I was in the polling, because I sit on top of the polls. I beat everybody out in fundraising every single cycle. It was the price tag that went along with it. I just don't think it's right. It's too hard, and my donors didn't want to see me spend $20,000 that way. And I didn't want to ask them to spend it.
Bonnie? Okay, Bonnie's got one more. Bonnie does have the ability to ask intelligent questions, so it's not that bad.
I know I've asked a lot of questions of you, but I did save my biggest question for last.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on banning the weather modification and solar geoengineering chemtrails?
Chemtrails.
I know that there are several states who have legislation in the works. I think that Tennessee has already banned any chemtrail dispersal. Mm-hmm. My husband and I are farmers, and we have wide open sky, and we see chemtrails and chemtrails and chemtrails. And I guarantee you that within an hour after seeing those chemtrails, we get cloudy, and I believe that it's changing our weather negatively. So what are your thoughts on banning chemtrails over South Carolina?
So, it's interesting. I first started to hear about this probably a year ago in Charleston. There was somebody who really passionate about it. There is a bill in the Senate. I can't remember right now who put it up. I need to really look in that bill and see what it says and what it's going to do.
It was our Senator Rex Rice.
It was Rex Rice. That's right. He talked about it in Pickens. I knew it if I could just think about it a second. But yeah, I mean, I think we have to get educated on things that are going on. I think there's a lot of research out there. I've been learning more and more about it. I think that's part of being good leaders, to try to kind of get your arms around what's being said. But I don't know how much movement that has had in the Senate. But I know it's a lot more talked about than it would. I mean, I'm all for keeping South Carolinians healthy. I want to make sure that, we're doing everything we can and we're protecting our farmlands. And so I've been reading some of the articles about that. So
When they change our weather, they change the output of our crops.
well, we need rain and sun, right? I can't grow anything, just for the record. I can grow beautiful tomato plants with no tomatoes, but they got a lot of green leaves on them, so I'm going to take your word for it.
Well, I will give you this opportunity to wrap up, and any closing remarks you'd like to make before we say goodbye tonight.
Well, just thank you so much. Wishing everybody an amazing holiday weekend. I know we have Passover, there is Easter, tomorrow is Holy Friday, and so a Good Friday. So thank you all for making time to come out and hear from me. I'd love your support. If I haven't earned your vote by now, I plan on doing that by June 9th. Again, go out to PamelaEvette.com. I'd love for you to be a volunteer. You can click on that. You can ask for signs. You can see where I am. You can see where I'm going. And you can hear more about my policies and me. So thank you all so much, and thanks for coming out tonight. Good to see you again.
And
We were
on
together
behalf-
today.
On behalf of the Pickens County Republican Club, we thank you for coming.
It was so nice meeting you.
Closing business, please, if you feel it's so inspired, leave a tip for the ladies
Take a sign, put it in your yard.
that work here. Good food, good service. So if you would, leave a tip and sign our email list. And if you want, come back to see us.